If you need help, brothers and sisters, please get it. It's not weakness to need it, and there's no shame in asking for it. If nothing else, my DMs are always open. She sat in the corner booth of a small coffee shop, staying away from the few customers that were there. She kept her distance, not only to avoid conversation, but to be alone with her thoughts. Today had been a good day. She'd had enough for a coffee and a muffin, and she'd been remembered. She wore her old jacket, one that had been carefully mended and looked after, festooned with patches that were incomprehensible to the people around her. To those who knew how to read them, though, they told a story. A lifetime of combat, of being away from home and family, until the sand became home. Until her squad mates were family. She finished her coffee, savoring the warmth sitting in her belly, and made sure to throw away her trash. Zipping up her jacket, she braced herself for the cold of the world outside and stepped out. As the door closed behind her with a merry jingle, she heard the barista call out, "Happy Veterans Day!" She gave the man behind the counter a brief wave and shoved her hands in her pockets, heading down the sidewalk. The people she passed invariably reacted to her presence the same way. They would smile, reach out to shake her hand with a "thank you for your service," tumbling from their lips, then get near enough to notice. Their faces would twist in disgust, their noses would wrinkle, and they would hurry away. She didn't blame them. After years of dealing with it, she didn't even notice anymore. The smell of an unwashed body, the scent of despair, alcohol fumes, and worse clung to her like a funerary shroud. She needed it, though. Not much. Not like some of her other friends, who had drowned their sorrows in the bottle until one day they just didn't come back up. It helped keep the shakes at bay, helped deal with the nightmares. Still, she knew it was only a matter of time before her luck ran out. She had tried to get help. She had gone to the doctors and attended the meetings. Slowly, imperceptibly, things had gotten worse. She had lost her job, then her home. Her friends had succumbed to one thing or another. Disease, injury, too many drugs, not enough drugs. Through it all, she had soldiered on, a smile on her face. She turned down an alley, pulling her collar up. As fat snowflakes began to fall, off in the distance, she could see her home. A mess of steel and cloth surrounded it, and politicians swore that one day it would be finished. They'd been saying that for a decade now. It was a bridge. The Bridge of Tomorrow, they called it. They had spent so much time and money building it that the joke of which will be finished first? Elder Fantasy VI? Or the bridge? With an image of the world on fire in the background had become ingrained in the collective consciousness of pretty much everyone. She climbed the scaffolding, moved aside the wooden panels, clambered over forgotten caution tape, and eventually made it into the small shipping container she called home. Foam and newspaper hung from the walls, providing insulation. Old blankets were balled up in a corner, in a space she jokingly called the bedroom. A box sat by the lone light in the container, holding an assortment of small, oval-shaped metal discs. Names were embossed on the metal, along with numbers and blood type. Mendez, Juan. Rodriguez, Miguel. Vaccarano, Gelfred. Harrison, Amy. Friends. Squad mates. Taken too soon by the Reaper. Some had gone peacefully, too drunk or high to realize what was happening. Others had gone fighting, screaming out in rage or fear. She missed them all. She had considered following them, after she had been kicked out for taking too much damage. She'd been resentful then, angry at a world that didn't understand her, that remembered her only when it was convenient, that forgot about her when the photo op ended. She'd bounced back since then, relying on the mental resilience they had drilled into her. Taken the anger, the pain, the confusion, and stuffed them into a little box labeled "Deal with it later." She'd plastered a smile on her face and moved forward. The time to deal with it had never come, and the box sat in the corner of her mind, gathering dust and cobwebs. One by one, her friends had moved on, some to better things, others just coasting through life, but they'd all moved on. And so she sat in her little container, surrounded by ghosts and memories. The sun had set, and winter held the city in an icy grip. She'd be undisturbed until morning, when the work crews would arrive and pretend to work for another day. Which is why the knock at her container door surprised her. She reached for the sharpened piece of rebar she kept at hand to dissuade visitors and carefully peeked out of the door. She stared in shock at the man on the other side. She'd recognize that bald head and pasty skin anywhere. "Brandon?" Brandon smiled. "Hey, sis. I've spent a long time looking for you. You're not exactly an easy woman to pin down." She threw the door open, heedless of the cold, and threw herself into his arms. He patted her matted hair and held her close as the box in her mind opened, and everything poured out. She cried. She screamed and raged. After an eternity of tears, her mind quieted enough for her to hear. "We're family, sis. Forged in fire and blood. And I'm sorry I wasn't here when you needed me. Come on. I've got a warm place. You look like you could use some food and a bath." She laughed, but it was a fragile thing. She could feel the rage threatening to overwhelm her again. He looked at her and spoke quietly. "Family sticks together." Together, the two soldiers headed off, one wearing an old, carefully mended jacket, a pocket full of discs serving as a reminder of the real code of freedom.